Alright, guys, for my historical person or historical speech, I chose a person who is very well known throughout history. And for my three visual aids, I chose a Bible. This gives it away who the speaker or who the famous person is. Equals MC square, and a picture of a molecule from Wikipedia.com. Okay, to kind of paint a picture for this person, obviously it's Albert Einstein, but to kind of give a little bit of a description of him through, it's kind of an urban legend, whether or not it's true that actually happened, but it kind of explains the kind of thought process that Albert Einstein had and how he used his mindset to think about just any different ideology or anything of that nature. And I got this from Urban Legends. Well, that's the top, the whatever category from about.com. But it was posted by William on June 23rd of 2004. And it says, a professor of a university challenged his students with this question: did God create everything that exists? A student answered bravely, yes, he did. The professor then asked, if God created everything, then he created evil. And since evil exists, as noticed by our own actions, so God is evil. The student couldn't respond to that statement, causing the professor to conclude that he had proved that belief in God was a fairy tale and therefore worthless. Another student raised his hand and asked the professor, may I pose a question? Of course, answered the professor. The young student stood up and asked, Professor, does cold exist? The professor answered, what kind of question is that? Of course cold exists. Have you ever been cold? The student answered, in fact, sir, cold does not exist. According to the laws of physics, we are considered cold. Or what we consider cold, in fact, is the absence of heat. Anything is able to be studied as long as it transmits energy, or heat. Absolute zero is the total absence of heat, but cold does not exist. What we have done is create a term to describe how we feel if we do not have body heat, or if we are not hot. And does dark exist? He continued. The professor answered, of course. This time the student responded, again, you are wrong, sir. Darkness does not exist either. Darkness, in fact, simply is the absence of light. Light can be studied, darkness cannot. Darkness cannot be broken down. A simple ray of light tears the darkness and illuminates the surface where the light beam flashes. Dark is a term that we humans have created to describe what happens when there is lack of light. Finally, the student asked the professor, sir, does evil exist? The professor replied, of course it exists. As I mentioned in the beginning of class, we see violations, crimes, and violence anywhere in the world, and those things are evil. The student responded, sir, evil does not exist, just as in the previous cases. Evil is a term which man has created to describe the result of the absence of God, of God's presence in the hearts of man. After this, the professor bowed his head and didn't answer back. And obviously this man's name was Albert Einstein. And whether or not this kind of really displays Albert Einstein's philosophy or perspective on religion, it kind of shows how he uses different ideas and ways to point out or to give his point. And for me, I find it very interesting how he uses certain ideas or certain terms to describe his point in a way that it's hard for someone else to rebuttal how he thinks. And Albert Einstein also is very well known for E equals MC squared, which we always hear about from the time we first start school to those who are in all those different scientific classes and learn more about what MC squared or E equals MC squared is actually about. But he produced this theory in 1905, and it is the equation that small amounts of mass can be converted into huge amounts of energy, which this was one of the main ways that scientists have used to develop nuclear power, which obviously we use today, and most of us are very thankful for. And the last visual aid I had, which I showed you, was the molecule from Wikipedia. he was actually the one who was the person to calculate Avogadro's number and size of molecules, which I don't use anything for, but apparently people who are scientists and all that will use to do calculations and things of that nature. So that's just a little bit about Albert Einstein and all he has done to make an impact in history and science and things of that nature.